Constructive feedback in development and design is so important because it's the difference between making someone feel good about their work and making them feel poorly, like they're not very good. And I know that I've been on both sides of this table. I've given good feedback as well as given bad feedback, and I'm trying to improve on that. But at the same time, I've also received really bad feedback and good feedback in the past, and it was the difference between making me feel like I'm terrible at my job versus that I feel like I'm really improving and getting better. And this is why constructive feedback is so important, because being able to give good feedback to someone can really make them do better at their jobs. Now, in terms of constructive feedback, there's lots of different types, and in design and development, I wanted to give you guys a few examples of what I personally think is really good feedback and a good way to go about doing feedback. For me, it comes into a few steps, but the very first one is being able to really understand what someone is doing and why they're doing it in a certain way. If you don't do this, then you're almost dismissing them. You're almost not really caring to listen to what they're doing. And if you don't do this first step, then you won't even know how to help them improve, because you won't understand the reasoning of why they developed a code in a certain way or a design in a certain way. Now let's take a think about this in terms of development. In terms of development, maybe we're looking at a function and all the variable names are letters. And this is terrible because you're thinking to yourself, how can I read what's going on here? It's really hard when all variables are just letters and you don't know what is happening. You've got like I's and A's and B's everywhere, and it might be confusing looking at this. And when you have to give a peer some feedback on how they can improve on their code, you just might go, this is terrible, I can't understand any of this because of all the variable letters. Now this isn't good feedback. This is feedback that might make the other person feel bad. And where we might take that first step to give some good feedback is being able to talk to the person and asking them, so what's going on in this function? Why are there so many variable letters? Because I'm not too sure if I can understand what's going on. When you do this, when you talk to someone, you might find out that maybe the boss rushed them through this piece of code and they just didn't have any time to code it out properly. And then you'll be able to understand why this happened. At the same time, you can talk to them and say that, for yourself, you're finding this very hard to be able to read. And because of this, it would really help if they were better variable names. So you might say like the letter I here. It doesn't make much sense to me, but if you rename this to index of loop or something like that, it'll make it a lot easier for you and other people to be able to read. This way you've understood what's going on and why the code was done in a certain way. You're giving them feedback on how they can improve and the reasoning behind it. And even if they might not be able to have the time to do so, at least you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. And that way, the next time this person has a look at their code, they'll want to do a better job because they'll want to improve and help you out as well as other people out. And these are the hallmarks of good feedback. And I've seen this in design as well. And design's a hard one because it's based on your feelings and emotions. And a lot of the times when you're doing feedback with design, it's actually coming to you from a client. But when you have an opportunity to give feedback to other people, it really helps if you're able to give it in a structured manner. With clients, I know that so many times I get feedback that they just don't think this looks any good, or they just don't like this color, but this doesn't really tell me anything. Being able to understand why you feel a certain way is really important. And in design, I know now when I'm reviewing other people's design how to give better feedback. Instead of just saying that this design doesn't look any good for someone who's starting out, it's much better to understand what they're doing as well. So this means that if they're doing a piece of design where they're trying to put lots of text elements together and it looks like it's all on a single page, but it's a bit hard to read, you have to talk to them and understand why they've done this. And in their case, maybe they just weren't too sure on how to place all the elements. And this is where you can talk to them. You can tell them that with text on a website, it's really important to be able to have good spacing. So if you put more padding at the top and at the bottom of an element, then you'll give that element more room to breathe and you'll make it stand out a little bit more. And this way the text will be more readable. Being able to address a concern like this, being able to describe the reasoning behind the design elements and why you think they can be improved will help anyone improve their design rather than them thinking that they just didn't do a good job. They'll be able to intuitively understand that you're trying to help them out and you're giving them advice, and they'll be able to apply the same advice in the future. And this will make the person feel great. They'll feel more inspired to be able to do better work in the future. And if you don't do this, if you don't give good feedback like this, you might put the person down. They might not feel like they can do a good job, and that's the last thing you want to do. Especially when you're working with employers and employees, you're working with peers, you want to be able to have a good rapport with all of them. And I think that constructive feedback is a really important step in that. And constructive feedback can also be applied online all the time. If you're working on open source projects or big repositories on GitHub where you need to do lots of pull requests and reviews, being able to talk to someone and give them proper feedback on why you might reject a certain request or something like that will help the person better address that issue. And that way in the future, the whole project will do better. Anyway, these are my thoughts on constructive feedback, and I know that it's a really important thing to me, but what are some of the things that you guys do to make sure that you have good constructive feedback? I'd love to know. Anyway, my name's Adrian, and I do videos around design and development, but I also love doing all these other topics as well. So if you have ideas for topics, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.